Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. Today's video is going to be my updated team selection. That's going to be based on the update that we had on the rules, based on Let's Talk FPL and his post on Twitter and his kind of clarification of some of the rules that we understood or misunderstood as well, and also an update simply on the chip strategy of the wildcard specifically. So our understanding of the wildcard has radically changed. It seems like the wildcard now is much stronger than the FPL wildcard. What it should allow you to do is do the simple FPL job of completely changing your team with unlimited transfers, but the wildcard will continue to roll within the same match day all the way up until the near end of match day 2, and therefore the start of match day 3. And so if you're able to actually change your team at the end of match day 2, you're effectively setting your team up for match day 3 included, and therefore the opportunity to free hit the entire group stage is now present if you wildcard in match day 2, as far as I understand the rules to be. This is what everyone seems to have conceived based on the latest news. It might change, it might not actually end up working out with the coding, but this is how I'm going to interpret, and this is how I'm going to play off in this FPL. Another disclaimer is I'm going to be using the booster chip of the 12th man. The reason why I'm using the 12th man chip is because I think this is a great opportunity to do so just before we head into match day 2, where I'm going to wildcard, and the 12th man should be a great chip to actually use because a lot of easy games on paper are being played in match day 1. One thing to also say is that your 12th man, if you're planning to wildcard match day 2, should 100% be the most expensive player in your team, and therefore it should be Mbappe. So if you're planning to use Mbappe in your team, put him with the 12th man chip, then you have the most amount of budget left for your starting team and your bench to be utilizing that kind of 100 million left in the bank. I personally made the mistake of 12th manning Neymar a little bit too early, so I have that 1 million lost, but ultimately I don't really care because I'm very happy with the look of my team. And there's maybe only one mistake that I'd like to change, which is going to be Al Sheeb, who's the keeper for Ecuador. But still, it's going to be a one match day punt, and potentially, of course, Qatar could still pull out a great home performance versus Ecuador. Anyways, let's actually head into the clean sheet odds because I think that's a very key bit of strategy here before I talk about my defensive strategy. The clean sheet odds have actually been provided by two lovely members from the FPL Twitter community, 11fi and FPL Schadenfreude. And what I would like to talk about is they've created a website which is fantastic, which actually houses a lot of great data and information around the World Cup 22 fantasy. I also believe that they're planning to create an expected points model, or chart at least, that should support all the FPL managers as we head into FPL fantasy, which is going to be less than 48 hours away. So do look into that and have a look in the link in the website in the description below and enjoy all the kind of lovely information that they've compiled for us for free. And do, of course, stay tuned to 11fi because I think he does post a lot of news around FPL and potentially other fantasy game modes if you're interested. Anyways, let's dive into the clean sheet odds. Brazil actually doesn't have very good clean sheet odds in match day 1 because they're facing Serbia. And you can see their best matches in match day 3. So I'd completely avoid the Brazil defense here. Argentina and Spain have the two best odds simply. And I think there is a punt opportunity to go for someone like Jordi Alba. You could also go for Laporte to tackle the Spain defense, or even Unai Simon, but I think he's a little expensive when you compare it to some of the other options who have less clean sheet odds but are much more better priced. Argentina, though, do have a player like Otamendi, who I think is really, really great budget. 5 million to actually get a player who got decently rested in the previous friendly game, I think is a fantastic opportunity. 62%, I think there's nothing you can really do to go wrong here. He's cheaper than Emi Martinez, so Otamendi for me is a lock as well. And we haven't really seen much fullback production from this Argentina team, so I think it's quite an easy pickup. France here is very tough because on the right-hand side, I do think Koundé and Pavard can compete for both the right center-back position and the right wing-back positions. As far as the left wing-back position, you have Lucas Hernandez also competing with his brother Theo Hernandez, and that's going to be really tough. Plus, with the center-back situation, with some of the injuries that we've seen so far, and also the radical change and the sort of changing of the guard with Saliba coming in, with players like Konate finding some form and also finding himself out of injury, you do have options here where Deschamps is planning to move into a four-back structure. So not only are they not planning to really play the wing backs anymore, they're going to play just natural fullbacks, which maybe allows for Lucas Hernandez to play, maybe Koundé to play because he plays right back for Barcelona. This is going to be very hard to actually predict what the back four for France is because we don't really know and we haven't really seen a back four in a while. As far as England, I think they have a fantastic opportunity here. And the lovely thing, of course, is they have some great punts and some great prices in the fullback positions. Portugal, similarly, but Cancelo, of course, is quite toughly priced. And I think the steal is going to be Diogo Costa, who's at 5 million. That is such a sort of bonus to Cancelo. That 1 million price benefit is going to be huge for some managers, particularly those who are going to target some other fullbacks at cheaper prices. And one of those key options is going to be someone like Mela from Denmark, who's at 4.5, and you can definitely target that Tunisia game without even having to fear the Matchday 2 game of France if you plan to use the wildcard in Matchday 2. So those are my thoughts. You can also maybe think about going for one Matchday punt of Ricardo Rodriguez. I think that's also a fantastic opportunity here to go for another 4.5 million punt. Anyways, if we go back to the defense, the actual team that I've actually selected is Otamendi. You have Trippier and Shaw and Dumfries. Trippier, Shaw, and Dumfries are both super interesting options because I think they possess the double-edged sword. Dumfries actually has a very low clean sheet odd percentage compared to some of the other leading nations that we expect to have great games in Matchday 1. But I think part of that too is based on, I would say, the misconception of maybe Mane's injury. It seems like Mane, of course, is not going to play the World Cup. We got that confirmation today from the Senegalese FA. And therefore, I think Dumfries is good to go. And I think also our previous expectations of this Dutch team is that they're able to score plenty, but also not necessarily keep clean sheets. I still think that Dumfries, because he's such a great attacking sword, is someone that is worth keeping. And also is a great effective ownership hedge versus a lot of managers because his ownership will be sky high. Shaw and Trippier are options that I think are invaluable. You might not want to actually double up on a defense. I know a lot of fantasy managers don't really like that concept. But I think England have proven to be in a lot of knockout stage tournaments and also just simply in the World Cup and big games as well to be very resolute as a defense. Of course, their recent run of records hasn't been very good. I still think that Trippier and Shaw possess that attacking edge. We've seen Shaw score in open play. We've also seen Trippier be an absolute menace throughout this entire Premier League season, both on set pieces and also in open play. So I think I have no doubts of going for these players at 5 million because I think they're at great prices. Mela gets to play Tunisia. We get to ignore Matchday 2. Have a very offensive fullback who plays extremely well for Denmark, much better than he does when he plays domestically for Atalanta, so that's going to be a huge plus. And Diogo Costa is, for me, the effective ownership hedge versus someone like Cancelo at a much cheaper price. So that's going to be how I'm incorporating my defense. Coupled with Al-Sheep, who actually plays ahead of Costa. So Costa, of course, hopefully will get to bench Al-Sheep if he doesn't get the clean sheet. But Ecuador seems to have been a very blunt attack. Now, if you actually look at the website that I mentioned with where Eleverify and Schadenfreude have provided a lot of data on expected goals as well, Ecuador seems to actually be very favored amongst betting houses to score versus Qatar. But I do think that there will be an element here with Ecuador being so poor in attack that I don't really see themselves actually getting more than one goal versus this Qatar side. I might be completely wrong. Qatar, I think, is still a decently strong team, and I think even though their expectations for the World Cup aren't particularly high, I still think this is an interesting chance to actually pick Al-Sheep as your 4.0 keeper, particularly if you're going for Diogo Costa, because you can't go for that double up of Rocher and Costa. Moving into my midfield, what I would actually like to go into is Bergwijn, Di Maria, Skov Olsen, and De Arrascaeta. And these are the options where you're looking at punts here, like Arrascaeta for Uruguay. I'm not really interested in Trossard. I've moved away from Trossard because the Belgium national team looks rather depressing. I was watching the performance versus Egypt. They seem like they're too easily broken apart as a defense, and overall, I really don't think that they'll actually control the ball as much as we'd like versus a team like Canada that are actually very youthful and dynamic. Now, I'm not saying that Belgium have an inability to score versus Canada, but when we're looking at the midfield punt, I think De Bruyne is a little bit too overpriced. Hazard simply isn't worth his price, and he hasn't shown any form this season for us to think that he will justify his price. And then Trossard also doesn't seem like he's any close to actually playing for this Belgium national team. So maybe you'd like to punt on someone like Carrasco, but I don't really see the opportunities there. As far as Skov Olsen, once again, similar to Mela, you get to completely avoid the Matchday 2 disadvantage of playing versus France, and you get to simply just bask in the Matchday 1 punt here for a 6 million player who's been incredibly efficient both for club and for country, and you get to target Skov Olsen for 6 million. Di Maria seems to be fantastic. He was rested at 45 minutes in the game versus UAE, where he managed to score 2 goals very early on in around 30 minutes, and he looked to have a fantastic performance, also getting 1 assist for Messi, although it was actually quite an incredible Messi goal and dribble. But Di Maria still looks like a fantastic player. He's nailed down that right wing position. I think the only reason why he might not play is if Julian Alvarez has to fill in, and maybe if they'd like to rest Di Maria. But I think they might play Di Maria Matchday 1 and Matchday 2. That doesn't even matter though, because it's just a Matchday 1 punt, and you get to play for Saudi Arabia, you get to play for Di Maria, and I think he looks in fantastic form. I actually went to watch Italy versus Argentina live at London at Wembley recently, and Di Maria for me had as great a performance as Messi in that game, and that was quite a competitive game in my opinion. Overall, the level of football is very high, and I thought Di Maria was still there. And of course, not much has changed. He's gone to Juventus, hasn't had the best season, but for Argentina, he's a different beast. Bergwijn is also in my team. I've also taken Rodrigo de Paul out of my team, and simply put, Rodrigo de Paul seems to have a lot of value as a 5 mil player, as an enabler. but I think Otamendi actually possesses the same value, if not more, if you're just looking at the pure chances to get a clean sheet in match day 1. Anyways, going back to Bergwijn, you have someone here who gets to play for Senegal. Senegal, of course, have been actually quite a resolute defense. They've actually brought a lot of games close, and they've also been very consistent when it comes to things like penalty shootouts and so on and so forth. But Bergwijn, as I said, has a price that really can't be ignored. I think at 7 million, you're still able to tap into that Dutch attack and possibly hedge against some people who've gone for punts like Gakpo or even going for Klaassen. So, or Janssen, and therefore Bergwijn for me is quite an appealing punt at 7 million. I've also gone for Sané on the bench. Sané is going to be someone who fills in, hopefully, for another player who has a much weaker match. Sané's at 9 million, so a little bit expensive, but I think a punt that I think is worthwhile to get a little bit of a hedge here, playing versus a team like Japan that actually play in a very, very open style. I expect Germany to actually score more goals than they did in a previous friendly, where they actually had to rely on a Nicholas Fulkrug goal at around 80 minutes to actually able to win that game 1-0. Sané for me is a great punt. As I said, I think he will fill in and take up some offensive positions, particularly with the absence of Timo Werner. I'm really hoping he can step up there. And the main reason why Sané is an interesting punt is because he's a midfielder, right? You have someone like Gnabry or Muller, and they occupy forward positions, and I think it's too tough to really sort of trade off there. As far as Arrascaeta, you have someone who has been in great form for Uruguay in the World Cup qualifiers. He hasn't necessarily been playing too much for Uruguay lately, but I think because his club form has been quite good, and also there are some key injuries to his Uruguay team, and I don't think that the expectations for the 10 position are really that high. I still think he's going to slot back in and probably play match day 1 as a starter. He's also been very consistent overall throughout his career in Uruguay, and at 5.5, I still think he's a great punt that we shouldn't pass up on, simply because a lot of the options at 6.5 to 7 million are very poor. I don't think Zielinski is actually as good as people suggest, because for me, Poland's ceiling is very low, and as I said, this is a match day 1 punt. South Korea is quite a great punt to actually go for a 10/right winger for Uruguay. And if we move into my forwards now, this is where I get to actually incorporate the 12-man chip. Now, as I said, I did make a mistake here, where Mbappe definitely should be my 12th man, and therefore I have potentially the chance to change Al-Shib into another player, maybe rotate Otamendi into Emi Martinez, maybe go for another player here and actually upgrade over Otamendi as well. But I've gone for Al-Shib, I've gone for Otamendi. I've also locked in 12th man Neymar. I was too gung-ho with it. I was just too interested in the concept of going for Neymar as a 12th man, and I was very high on Mbappe, and I didn't really anticipate myself actually changing that, because I didn't think the rules would actually be that radical for the wild card. But anyways, I've actually done it so that I have a 12th man Neymar. As I said, if you're actually looking to go for a team with a similar structure here, you could actually have a 1 million plus benefit here by just simply putting Mbappe as your 12th man, going for Neymar as your starter, and then upgrading one of the two players, probably in the defensive positions, I would say is preferable. The one punt that I have here is Fati, and I think Ansu Fati has fantastic goal scoring odds available. He is one of the players who expects to be within the top 4 to 5 punts for gambling odds for top scorers, and he's right in the list there with players like Messi, with Mbappe, and he actually has the same goal scoring odds as the Neymar. So even though Neymar is actually joint with Fati for goal scoring odds, if you look at 11FI's website, I think this is a fantastic opportunity to bask in Fati, because he's only 7.5 million. And I'm not really too high, I suppose, in going for the double up of the Brazilian forward line with Richarlison. So therefore, I think Fati gives me a great range of coverage here, being able to actually target Spain, who on paper have their easiest game in the group from an attacking point of view versus Costa Rica, although maybe you could argue Japan is that opportunity for Spain. As I said, Fati has been someone who's been playing for the left wing position in the previous friendly, and I really don't think that anyone else has nailed down that position for the Spanish national team. The fact that he actually was able to score a goal there immediately on his re-entrance to the national team is something that's huge. Luis Enrique actually mentioned that players like Asensio and Morata will be actually competing for those forward positions in this World Cup, and that there's no sort of sense of a false nine here, but that doesn't really affect someone like Ansu Fati. I think he will be able to actually be a very creative player versus Costa Rica, and I'm hoping to actually enjoy from him within my team. I'm going to include Neymar as my 12th man, as I said, and I think Messi is absolutely going to be my captain. Messi is someone who I've always been eagerly waiting to play with in the World Cup, and this is our last chance to actually play with Messi in our World Cup fantasy team, so I would take every opportunity as possible to captain the man, because this Argentina squad are actually highly favored to actually win the World Cup alongside Brazil, and I think this really could be their chance, now with the fit Di Maria as well, hoping it goes well. My second captaincy option will be Mbappe if the Messi captaincy doesn't work out, and that's going to be how I lay out my team. And of course, players like Sané, Fati, Arrascaeta, and Costa will come on if their counterparts don't do well. And that's going to be my team selection for now, so I hope you guys have a wonderful day ahead, and I'll see you guys in the next video.